Hi everybody, Matt back with you. Hope you're okay. Well, the reason you've not seen me for the last week, when I promised I was off on many explores this October, is because COVID finally jumped up and got me, which is possibly why I'm sounding even more out of breath and gruffer than normal. However, I believe I may have kicked its ass, and it's on its way out. So whilst I've been at home, I've been reading a lot of this book, which is called The Annals of Todmorden, which possibly doesn't sound very exciting. But what it is, it's actually a fantastic record of Todmorden back in the day, of people and places and things that were happening. And what I've decided is when I get too old and decrepit to continue to scramble through tunnels and climb up waterfalls and do the general urban exploring, or just if the weather's bad, I'm going to keep returning to this book and explore some of the people who were in it. And one person got my attention whilst I was reading it the other day, and that person is listed here on the 1st of October 1871. John Gorman, tailor, 75, an old miser, found dead in bed at Blind Lane, Todmorden. So what I suddenly realised was that 150 plus years after this man died, I'm reading that he was an old miser. I thought, how unfair that somebody has put in writing for posterity forever that man was an old miser. So I decided to do a little bit of digging on Mr. Gorman, and here's what I found. With the help of a number of people on the Todmorden Past and Present Facebook page. So John Gorman was originally from Ireland, and up to his death in 1871, he spent 40 to 50 years on Blind Lane in Todmorden, and here he worked as a tailor. So this is Blind Lane, where John Gorman lived for between 40 to 50 years, and the numbers of the houses on the left of me are odd numbers, so 1, 3, 5, etc. So I imagine Gorman himself probably lived here, because there is a picture that shows the buildings that are just here that I presume are the even numbered houses, and Gorman lived at number 4. So here's the photo that shows that same picture with the Weaver's Arms, and on the right some houses which we're going to presume number 2 or perhaps number 4 as shown on the photo. So by trade, John Gorman was a tailor and was apparently exceptionally good at his work. However, he didn't work for a specific company. He did all his work from the second floor of his house at number 4 Blind Lane, and people would bring their goods and items to him for him to work on and mend and repair and make. And I guess they paid him the going rate. However, in the 40 plus years that Gorman lived in that house, he hardly did anything. He never cleaned, never seemed to wash, and over time the house became worse and worse and worse. And eventually, when he was no longer there, and people came into the house to look for him and found him, they declared that that house was not fit for human habitation. So in July of 1871, a flood had hit Todmorden. There's a surprise, some things never change. But it had got into the first floor of Gorman's house. But for some reason, his property had been missed when it came to people coming and helping and restoring properties back to some kind of order. Gorman had lived at Blind Lane, as I say, for over 40 years, and he had paid his rent every week. But for some reason the landlords had never quite checked in on him. So all that dirt and grime that had come in from the flooding was still in the property that he was living in months later. So the inquest into Gorman's death was held here. is what is now called the house that Jack built, or just, if you prefer, Jack's house. But it was known then, 150 years ago, as the Shoulder of Mutton. So the inquest was held to try and ascertain the facts about what had happened to John Gorman, had he died under unnatural circumstances, and gathered together a few witnesses, which included neighbours and people he knew from nearby, as well as members, or the chief member, of the Odd Fellows Guild, which he was a member of. And it was at this inquest they uncovered some quite extraordinary facts about John Gorman. So the people who knew Gorman just presumed he was penniless, and it didn't help the fact that he just looked like he must spend most of his time in the chimney, because he was always covered in soot and dirt and grime, and just generally never looked after himself. Didn't help by the fact that his chimney seemed to be blocked permanently, so whenever he was having a fire, the smoke would actually just drift through his house, and he'd have to open the window to let the smoke out. So his neighbours kind of kept an eye out for him, and they brought him clean clothes to wear. They brought him round and bathed him and washed him. They paid for barbers to come and cut his hair and shave him. And also at the inquest there were, again, that person from the guild where Gorman was a club member. And they had like an annual fee to pay, and he'd paid it once or twice in the many, many years he was there. But again, presuming he had no money, the people who knew him at the club actually paid his subscriptions for him, just so he could still be a member. So his neighbours at the inquest were absolutely stunned when they found out that in John Gorman's property they'd found roughly £83, and also in a savings account they found that he'd kept £21. Now obviously to you and me today that doesn't sound like a lot, but just going back to 1870, roughly £1 back then is equivalent to about £140 today. An average worker back in those days earned roughly £20 per year. So in today's money, all that money that Gorman had was worth roughly £12,000. But for some reason, it just hadn't helped himself with it. He'd stored it away. A couple of times apparently he'd been robbed, and somebody once stole £10 from him, which again doesn't sound like a lot today, but if you think about it back then, that's quite a lot to be robbed of. So this is where the term John Gorman, the old miser, comes in, because not only was he storing the money, he was also perhaps not the easiest of person to get on with, and this is perhaps where we can get those Scrooge comparisons. So despite all that money, at the inquest, the representative of the Oddfellows offered to pay for the funeral and grave of John Gorman. He was told that Gorman had not left a will, therefore no money could be given out either way, but under the circumstances, if the Oddfellows thought Gorman's money should go towards it, then he would have accepted it. However, that didn't happen, and the Oddfellows did pay for the funeral and the grave. So what happened to Gorman's money? Not sure. But it's a mystery as to why somebody would live like that in abject squalor when they had a lot of money. Gorman's buried up here, across Stone Graveyard. Let's see if we can find him. So here we are, at Cross Stone Graveyard. Goodness, what was that noise? Let's see if we can find Mr. Gorman. So, Crossstone is one of those graveyards that's currently in need of a fair bit of TLC. And a lot of it is impossible to walk through now. I think this is the right row from what I was told. So here he is, the gravestone in memory of John Gorman of Blind Lane, Taylor, who died October the 1st, 1871, age 75 years. So that is 151 years ago. And at the bottom here it says, erected by the prudence of the Vale Lodge, IOFMU, don't know what that means, Todmorden district. So there we go. So there we go. That's how I look at John Gorman, the old miser of Todmorden. What do you think? Do you think he really was Todmorden's version of Scrooge, hoarding all that money? Wasn't exactly living off his wealth, was he? He did manage to get quite a lot of things done for him by looking like he had no money at all. So that's just one of Todmorden's characters. In time we'll find some more to look at. It's a shame about this churchyard. Maybe one day we can do a cross-church graveyard on it, which reminds me I must pop back there soon and show you what wonderful things are happening. In the meantime, the crazy outfits are back tomorrow and we're off to Sheffield, so I'll see you there. Take care.